So, good day. I guess we're live now. Welcome to the Q&A. We're just waiting for a few more people. We'll give them a couple of minutes. Why don't we start off with this group here and just let's ask you a couple of questions and just get the ball rolling here. If you could maybe drop your current location into the chat there and just let us know where you're calling in from today for this exciting event. I'm talking to you here live from beautiful downtown Chilliwack, which is about an hour or so inland from Vancouver on the west coast of British Columbia, Canada. Welcome, Steve. Welcome, Leon. And we're gonna have some fun today. So there have been a couple of questions that were submitted as part of signing up. So I'm gonna touch on those first, unless somebody's has an emergency, they're jumping up and down, and we want to go through and talk about that. It is Thursday, September 18th at 11:02 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, just so everybody knows. We are actually live, but we are recording this, and so we will share this with everybody that's on here today and anybody that's signed up. Unfortunately, anybody that's not on here today will not be able to ask a live question. So we'll get started. My name is Peter Paquette. I am with Kwixand Solutions. We are a consultancy firm based in the west coast of Canada. We serve customers all across Canada and the United States, as well as other customers currently in Europe. And so we're very excited to be able to provide the kind of service that we do to them. Part of our service includes software development and things like that. But the other thing that we also do provide is professional services. We have CPAs and supply chain professionals on staff, as well as other people that we can bring in to provide a service that will help your company grow, will answer questions, and basically help to resolve issues and problems as you might encounter in your regular business. My expertise is in supply chain management. First job I ever had was working in a warehouse, and just working with part numbers and the organization of the shelves and the rows and the boxes and everything. It just made sense to me and felt very comfortable. And I just progressed through my work life in various distribution and manufacturing environments. I've learned something from every company that I've worked with or worked for. And I always find that very exciting. Professionally, in my accreditation with the Association of Supply Chain Management, I currently hold a CPIM and a CSCP, which is a Certified in Production and Inventory Management, and also a Certified Supply Chain Professional. So my expertise involves shop floor activities, as well as general business and outside the business activities. So we talk about CPIM being more internal looking, whereas CSCP is more external looking from the company perspective. And as part of maintaining my certifications, I continue to take courses, and I'm always learning. And I attend and go to various ASCM events, especially local ones here. And I always find that somebody has something to say that makes me think, and something that I always learn. And it's not necessarily the speakers. Sometimes it's simply somebody I'm talking to, somebody that I know even very well, that I'm networking with, and they just, they say something that makes me think, yeah, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. So my life being in supply chain management, that's kind of where we go. And one of the things that I've started to do in the last couple of years, especially, was to speak to some of the classes, local classes, operations, and supply chain related classes to help people who are coming into the supply chain field understand not just the technical side of things, but a lot more of this is how you're going to apply your knowledge when you actually get into the field. So going back to the ASCM, which emanates from the APICS body of knowledge. I'm just going to say that for supply chain management, the APICS dictionary defines supply chain management as the design, planning, execution, control, and monitoring of supply chain activities with the objective of creating net value, building a competitive infrastructure, leveraging worldwide logistics, synchronizing supply with demand, and measuring performance globally. If you scale this definition to like your realm of influence, like the company you work for, the industry you work in, or the region where you monitor or conduct your transactions, you can apply these same ideas to think globally but act locally. So it doesn't matter how big or small you are. It all is scalable. Okay, so I'm going to go off with a couple of questions, first of all, that were submitted by people through the signing in process, especially some of the young people and people new to supply chain. And also I was talking to our ASCM, local chapter ASCM Vice President of Education. We were talking at a recent event, and he was saying that a lot of people who are coming into supply chain have a lot of the same questions. And some of the questions are, what is my first supply chain job going to look like? Where am I going to start out in supply chain? A lot of people, even more experienced professionals who are coming out of operations and supply chain classes, even if they're obtaining a certification, an ASCM certification, or an NISCL certification, or supply chain, other supply chain certifications, know that they're not going to jump in necessarily as the chief supply chain officer of a company. They're not going to jump into the C-suite. So how do you break into supply chain? Well, first of all, there's various areas within and connected to supply chain, some of them direct and some of them indirect. And I'll just kind of list them off. I have listed a couple of things off here. So there's things like procurement and purchasing, inventory management, demand planning, supply planning, distribution, manufacturing, delivery logistics, and there's a few more. So in a larger company, you might be working in a position where one of those is your focus, or even just your whole job. So what's the difference between procurement and purchasing? In very basic terms, procurement is identifying the need, designing or finding the method or the product or item to fill that need, and then finding out how much it's going to cost and what it's going to take to get it to your location or to your site so that you can use it in your production or distribution. Whereas purchasing is managing, buying and managing that transaction and the transactional process with the vendor. Procurement and purchasing can work together as far as identifying, identifying a vendor to purchase from. But usually, once the procurement process is completed, purchasing can take over and just manage that process. Inventory management, of course, is once the inventory hits the floor, where does it go? What do you do with it? You can work with purchasing and decide, how much you need to buy, how much you can fit in a warehouse, in a location, things like that. So there's a whole lot of details that can go into all of that. Demand planning would be more focused on what are the orders coming in, for instance, the sales orders, what's our forecast going to be, how are we going to manage all that information coming in, and then disseminate that so that somebody in, for instance, supply planning can make sure that we can actually deliver that. And so I won't go into that, into all the details of that, but there are many different ways that you can get into that. There's also choices of company size, company characteristics. So you have the size of the company, small, medium, large, multinational. I've worked for a number of different companies in each of the sort of categories that I just mentioned. Multinational can be exciting. It's big, it's huge. There's a lot of moving parts, and you're dealing with people internally more than sometimes you are externally to get things done. A large company can be a very exciting place to work. Usually you would work in some sort of big office building, and you have a really nice coffee room and access to nice places to have lunch and things like that, and usually a nice clean office. But you're going to be a little more hands off on a lot of the product and things like that. Same with a large company. Again, it's not a multinational, so it might be a really big company, but you're at one location where you might be sort of separated from various departments and things like that, physically, as opposed to being able to walk across the room and talk to somebody that works in a different department. Small and medium companies are good for being able to access and have more hands-on experience with your products and your items. A lot more conversation with vendors and things like that. But again, sometimes with small and medium-sized companies, there's little room for what we call advancement and things like that. Sometimes, anyway, it's your choice. And one of the things that I would say is explore them all, because you won't know until you actually explore them. Another choice of company characteristic would be the sector, private or public. Some people really love and thrive working in the public sector in supply chain management, whether it's in purchasing or contract management or things like that. And some people really just don't like the rigidity of some of the public purchasing requirements, which are there to protect, the taxpayers and things like that. Understandable, but definitely something that we wouldn't have to do in the private sector. So in the private sector, working for a private company, whoever owns the company is essentially and effectively who you answer to, and who you really want to make sure that you're following their lead. It can be a good thing because, say, in a small or medium-sized company, you might have a more direct line to the owner of the company, whereas in a multinational, you might have shareholders or private equity or something like that, where you don't necessarily have direct access to the people who are pulling the purse strings there. Location or proximity to where you live, right? So, you might have an opportunity to have a really great job, but you have to commute an hour each way to get to work. Maybe not something you want to do. So, you have to make that decision and weigh your return on that one. And the different a couple other things, the industry that a company works in, you may or may not be interested in. And sometimes it's just the ideology. Sometimes you are looking at a company that is, very proactive with things like sustainability, and that's what you want to do. You want to be involved. You want to be, waist deep in sustainability and work deeply with that, and know that the company that you're working for is giving you the time and the resources to actually go and research sustainable replenishment of goods or manufacturing or things like that. And in another case, it may be something that's a nice to have, but if the company's not all hot about that, you're okay with that. And I touched a little bit on, we talked about like things, room for advancement. Just remember that your room for advancement is up to you, and it's not up to the company you work for. When you start working for any company, learn and understand everything you can about the company, about the industry, about the product lines, and your specific job focus. So to paraphrase a sales connotation of ABC, where salespeople say ABC, always be closing. In supply chain, we could say ABC is always be curious. if you get involved in a project internally, or even if you have the ability, or sorry, the opportunity to work with somebody else in supply chain, a colleague or friend of yours, maybe that you've met at the ASCM event or something like that, where they're able to bring in an outside person or resource to talk about their experience in supply chain management, and you can bring in and just learn about everything that they're doing, and take it with you, and maybe you'll find a way to apply it in your own work, in your own company, or in some future endeavor that you do. As a supply chain manager, a supply chain person, you want to become an expert in what you're doing at the company, so that you can create your own worth to the company. If you're a leader, you will be a leader. So just be who you are. And if you outgrow your position, and the company can't really do anything else for you, and there's nothing sort of on an extracurricular level that you can do to fulfill yourself in supply chain management, you can always choose to make a move. And there are lots and lots of opportunities out there and applications for supply chain management. And getting down to one other thing there, when you're working, even before you get to your working stage, is that we always talk about this with the classes, is that your network will always be your strongest tool, whether it's in your job or in just in help finding a job. Talk to the people around you about what they do, not so they can help you find a job or whatever, but so that what they have available, right? Connect with other supply chain people through ASCM or NISCL or Supply Chain West, and just get to know what's going on in those worlds, because some organizations may have a better connection to something that you may be looking for your next step. Okay. Get to know some of these people, on a personal level as well as business. Listen to them when they talk, and let them talk. You're going to learn a lot of stuff about the type of people they are, and what they're able to do, and what they do. That kind of makes them a little more successful in their particular current endeavor, and where they might want to go in the future. You might find somebody that you can work with as a partner to build something later on in the future. You might find somebody that you end up working with as a customer or supplier, and you'll already have that relationship established. So share with them as well, and create a conversation. Let them get to know you a little bit, so that they feel like they can approach you. And that's always something that we tell, especially young people in the class who are maybe a little nervous and not sure how to navigate through the networking. One thing I always tell people, and something I practice myself, is that as I walk up to somebody that I want to say hello to, I always introduce myself. Even though I have a name tag sometimes at these events and has my name on there, Peter Paquette from Kwixand Solutions, I introduce myself. And I do that until that person, as I walk up to them, they say, "Hi, Peter, how are you doing today? It's nice to see you," or something like that. When they say my name, I know that they know who I am. So if I get a chance to meet some of you at an event, and I see some of the people that are on this call, on this webinar, that I know personally, I don't have to introduce myself, but sometimes just for fun, I still do. And I actually don't tell them my name's Peter, just to make sure they're listening. That's just a joke. Anyway, just one other thing just with that is, just remember that they are colleagues and they're not your friends. So you do need to set boundaries to that relationship, and make sure that while you're still sharing, you're having a fun level of personal interaction. But there's not necessarily like a goal to come out of it. You just want to make sure that everybody knows, all these people that you meet, that they know who you are, and that they know what you're doing right now, so that if they need your help, they know who to call. So good supply chain people, they learn to do this. It's part of what we do. All right. So hopefully that was kind of a long answer, but there was a lot of information there, and hopefully people will recognize that it's a process. And it's not something that you can just follow steps. It's very fluid, and going out to looking for a job is more than just going out looking for a job. It's actually creating a network and creating a pathway for yourself, so that you understand that you may not like a particular part of supply chain management, and you just want to move into a different one, and that's fine. A company may be able to offer that for you, and if they can't, then you can always find somebody else to work for. Okay, so another question that was submitted by a very good friend of mine. I'll just read this off because I've actually I've copied and pasted this question so I didn't miss any of the words. Is reducing costs is even more important because of tariffs. Which areas of the business are companies focusing on? So this is kind of the hot topic right now. The tariffs has been going on for a better part of 2025 here. So first, I want to address what the worldwide tariff situation really is. Okay, everybody ready? It's a supply chain disruption. That's what the media calls it. That's what they started calling supply chain disruptions about 7 years ago. It's just another disruption, right? That doesn't mean it's less important or more important than any other disruption we've ever had. But I just like to point out, when was the first supply chain disruption, like ever in history? I mean, it was thousands of years ago, right? So this is not new. And if we look and think about the port strikes that were happening last year, or if we look at in Western Canada here a few years ago, I think it was about 3.5 or 4 years ago, we had a big flood, and it washed out some of the roads, and it took out the railway. It took out the railway here in British Columbia, and there were no rail lines coming in or going out to Eastern Canada. They were literally cut off, and it surprisingly, they were able to rebuild those lines very quickly, or at least one of them they got up really quickly. The second one came shortly after. At that time, there was a company I was working with who got a weekly shipment from Montreal, and they couldn't get it. They couldn't get their shipments for 3 weeks. They couldn't get shipments. The freight companies were not routing things through the United States because they were on rail cars, and there was all sorts of regulations and things that came into effect. But at the end of the day, we had to basically try to manage what we were doing. So again, that was just another supply chain disruption. So going back to the tariffs, so companies and countries around the world are being affected by other countries. These tariffs ultimately increase landed costs of a good in the country to which they're shipped, right? That's basically what is happening with the tariffs. And the added cost is either absorbed by the shipper, which reduces their margin, or it's paid by the receiver, either directly to their government agency or to the shipper as part of the sale. In either case, it's increasing the landed cost. So companies can control costs of most components within their market. So if you're within United States, or you're within Canada, you're within Europe, and you're buying raw material or products or components from within your region, then you can usually somewhat control the costs, at least a little more effectively. But what companies have not been concerned with until recently is things like country of origin of some of these components or some of the material used to produce them. Since many tariffs that we're seeing today are based on country of origin of a good or material, there are a number of free trade agreements in place between many countries and many regions, where the main concern that companies have is ensuring right now that they're compliant with that free trade agreement. So there was a speaker at an ASEM event last week who was talking about, in Canada, for instance, and the United States, where we have the CUSMA agreement, that a lot of companies who were shipping across the border were filling out the paperwork. They were probably doing it mostly correctly, and didn't really need to worry about it too much, because there wasn't too many questions about whether it was tariff or not tariff. But with these tariffs come into place, companies have now turned their focus to making sure that all of their ducks are in a row, that all of their documents are correctly listed with all the different countries of origin and the percentages of material or component, things like that. So effectively what they're doing is they're making sure that when those items go across the border and are now being reviewed to be whether they're subject to tariff or not, that the information is more precise. And that actually will first of all, that's one thing that will save money. So for instance, because some of these tariffs are specific to things like, say, steel and aluminum imported into the United States, some companies are looking to minimize the tariff by being more precise with the calculation of the volume or quantity of steel or aluminum that's part of the product, the item that they're shipping across the border. And when they report that quantity as opposed to just simply saying steel or aluminum, then they could be subject to a lower tariff or a lower amount on the tariff. So as an example, paying 25% of $1,000 is very different than paying 25% of $10,000. So if your actual percentage of the raw material is say $1,000 worth, you're going to pay a lot less than if you just simply say the finished good has steel in it, and they say, okay, great, well, the value of that good is $10,000, and we're just going to charge you the 25% on that. One other thing that can happen, or we've seen, is that some of these companies who perhaps were, say, shipping single packages or smaller volumes of packages across the borders are now able to ship in a larger quantity or a bulk quantity, which can reduce the cost of your brokerage fees and things like that. It doesn't necessarily reduce the tariff, but it does reduce the cost of doing business, because you don't have to pay a broker whatever their fee is, to say $25. If you pay them $25 to clear a product, or a shipment rather, and you clear 100 shipments, that's 25 times 100 shipments, right? If you send those 100 packages or the 100 shipments down as one shipment, you're going to pay $25 for them to clear just the one shipment, and then you have the ability to receive that on the other side. Again, it doesn't reduce whatever tariff you might have to pay on that particular shipment, but instead of paying $2,500, you're paying $25 to clear a shipment. So you just saved yourself a whole lot of money, right? There is could be I guess a negative side to that, in that on the other side of that border, whichever border it is, you now have to have somebody break that shipment down and send out the individual packages to the final destination. So there's a lot of 3PLs and 4PLs that can help you out with that, but there is a fee to that. There is a cost to that. And so remember, it's a business. People aren't going to do it for free, or they won't do it for free for very long, right? You might have a brother-in-law or something, a cousin that lives in the other country that can do that for you. But at some point, they have to make money doing something, right? So, like I said, this is business, and people generally don't do things for free. So while anything that a company can do at this moment to reduce cost, anything they do is strictly reactive. So one thing that we can do, and something that we always learn and think about in supply chain management after something like this happens, or when something like this happens, is how could we have prevented it? So in supply chain management, we like to be more proactive, right? And this is something that I learned, I think, probably one of the first times I ever really heard that term applied here, was when I was working for that multinational I mentioned before. I had a really great mentor who was the vice president of the purchasing department that I worked in. And he said, we talk about things in January that we're going to do all year long. And we always want to be proactive. We don't want to be working on a just on time process, because there's always going to be things that we have to react to. One of the speakers that I was listening to recently was talking about what could you have done, or what could you do to deal with the tariff situation right now. And he said, in order to react properly, you should start 12 months ago. And this is something that I kind of snickered at a little bit. I laughed, but just like everybody else. But at the same time, I remember situations in my past life when I was working in industry. I kept my ear to the ground. I knew what was going on in my little sort of realm of influence. I've spent a lot of time through the years buying internationally and getting shipments in from all over the world: China, Japan, Korea, Australia, Europe, South America, South Africa. And one of the things that, when you have shipments coming in via container internationally, that you're always kind of listening to the news, not directly, but you're listening to the news. And so when they talk about, a vessel that dropped a bunch of containers, or some vessel got held up in a port, or some, pirates, raided it or something like that, you take notice. And because they always have the vessel name, and they say, oh, the vessel name was, this vessel. And, now you're going looking at your shipping documents and say, okay, that wasn't my vessel. I'm okay. There's port strikes and labor disputes and things that happen. And, East Coast, West Coast, doesn't matter what country you're in. These things are in the news, and they're not in the news when they happen. They're in the news 6 or 8 months prior to that, when the different groups are talking, things happen. And so just be aware of that, because if you have, for instance, like a long lead time, you can be proactive and have your shipment routed differently, or at least be able to jump on it right away. So that's another thing. Is it's hard to say, how do we reduce costs right now? In some cases you can't. But you can be more proactive. So like for the next time around, you're going to be more prepared. So effectively, the best advice that I could offer in this case is, whatever you do, don't do anything risky that might end up costing you more in, say, fines and penalties, trying to get stuff across an international border, in some sort, with using some sort of subterfuge, as opposed to, being upfront and honest. Find ways to minimize the effect on your cost without potentially adding, to the overall cost. Be aware and on the lookout for opportunities you can do to take advantage of reducing costs without increasing your risks in the short term. Start making plans now for the long term that will mitigate that effect. So if you start looking at your long term now as, say, 3 months as opposed to a year, what can you do right now that that might reduce your cost in 3 months? Well, I mean, that can be really, really very specific. Is there a local vendor that you can buy from within your own country, so that it won't be subject to tariff? Is there somewhere you can buy from that will be subject to a lower tariff, or not a tariff at all? Another country. Do you have time? Do you have the resources to, if you need to tool up or anything like that, so that they can provide that product or that material to you? I could talk about that for about a million years, because especially at the beginning of the pandemic in 2019, we ran into this all over the place. Everybody was running into shortages, and especially when the lockdown occurred, and companies started shutting down plants. At the time, I was involved buying material from Asia, and in various parts of Asia, where they shut down their furnaces. Like, you don't shut down a smelting furnace just for the fun of it. It's a big deal. And when they sent everybody home, everything got locked down. When they started to kind of open things back up, they turn on one furnace at a time, and that's a big deal. Turning on a furnace took them like a month or something like that. It was crazy, just so that they could make steel and aluminum. So just for yourself, again, know what you're getting yourself into, and minimize your risk, and try to reduce your cost where you can. That's the now. In the future, really, you need to be more proactive, and that's where supply chain people can really help you out, because supply chain people are trained, and in their self, they have a tendency to think quite far ahead. Sometimes even 2 years out, and that's something that can really help out. All right, I've been yammering on for quite some time. Did we get some of these polls out? I think we did. So kind of companies, size of companies people are working in. Yeah, that's exciting. Wow. One person there looks like they're at least working for a multinational, and that's pretty good. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about another question here we had from, looks like somebody who is in software development. The question is, what complementary systems can be added to existing ERP systems like Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central that can expand the capabilities in supply chain planning? So I'm going to put a whole mess of shameless plugs in here, because obviously Kwixand Solutions, we do focus on implementing Business Central, and we're very good at it. So one of the things with any ERP is that there is what we'll call standard out-of-the-box functionality. And many ERPs have a lot of functionality already available in them. And depending on the sort of the classifications of some of the ERPs, I'll say, there are some that have a lot of data points, and then there's sort of a medium range, which have quite a few data points, and provide a lot of great functionality that matches that can be matched up and meshed with SOPs, standard operating procedures. And then there's some of the, I'll say, the ERPs that have much fewer data points, and those are sort of meant for much smaller businesses that that don't need to have things like manufacturing and that involved. So one thing that I will say is that Business Central, for instance, is one of those ERPs in sort of the medium number of data points, and provides really good, robust structure for manufacturing. And there are other ones that you can put in that same mix. But prior to creating sort of any extensions to an ERP, companies should really look into whether changes to their SOPs are viable. So making changes to your standard operating processes or procedures that would align with your ERP process could provide the needed utility you're looking for. Sometimes these changes in SOP involve a large cost. So if you have to add machinery or add people or things like that, move stuff around, get a bigger facility or a smaller facility or things like that, it can cost a lot of money. So that has to be weighed against the cost of developing the extension, which in developing, I'm talking about developing the software side of things, so that you can realize or really determine your return on investment. And the other thing that I would couple with that is the scalability. So do you need to do is it scale is the SOP change, scalable? Is it scaling? Are you scaling your company by changing your SOP, which will now align better with the ERP system? Or would it be better because you don't want to change your process? Your process is fine. You've spent decades perfecting it, and it actually works very well. Or it would be very costly to change your process. But you definitely need this sort of functionality. Then developing something as an extension on the ERP would be the way to go. So either developing a customization or an extension like that, or in some cases, there are what we call specialty add-ons available for just about every aspect of your business, like every department of your business for any ERP, and it just depends on your needs and also the structure of your ERP. And these should be considered and weighed against the customizations because again, these add-ons may not provide the full 100% functionality you're looking for, but they might provide enough. So say 85 or 90%, that if you maybe change your SOP a little bit, then you bump it up. Or on the other hand, maybe 85 or 90% is sufficient to get you where you need to be, right? And that'll be very effective. And you can also look at that as analyze that as a return on investment. So in that case, there's companies called ISVs, or independent software vendors, that can provide a number of, in some cases, free apps, or in some cases, subscription-based versions of these add-ons. For Business Central would be through Microsoft AppSource. And these apps, they can be integrated with the ERP. They can either exist outside the ERP or integrate with them, depending on the structure of that. And these are things that once you can test these out in your test environment and things like that before, just to make sure that you're happy with it. But you know what? These are some things that can really be very, very helpful in getting the functionality that you need without spending a fortune, right? So another side is that sometimes ERP partners will also help develop apps through client experience and working with other partners. So just recently, Kwixand has done some of this client experience with a company called B2Wise to create a DDMRP connector to Business Central. So there's a couple of shameless plugs there. But then we've actually put this out onto AppSource. So it's something that we're very proud of, and something that we're excited to be able to be developing with other companies. So just to talk about the complementary systems, just a little bit there is definitely something that can be available to you. Sorry. All right. I'm just going to have a check in the chat here. So Steve's asking, when you're consulting with customers, what are the most common challenges you're seeing? What are the most common types of recommendations that you make to improve their business? Thanks, Steve. That's a great question. One of the things when we're consulting with customers, there's a couple of things. First of all, they don't know what they don't know. So we have to try to ease them into realizing that change is required. And we're not asking them to change as much as they've already told us they need to change. And that's definitely a point that when we talk to a customer about, for instance, implementing SOP process change, quite often there's going to be some resistance. If we're looking at a documentation process change or a document change, right? So as I mentioned earlier with the tariffs and things like that, if you're shipping stuff from Canada to the United States, and you're not CUSMA compliant, you're going to have issues. So you need to actually go into and spend the time to look at your documents, look at your documentation, look at all the things that the information that you're supposed to be providing to CBP, the U.S. Border Patrol guys, and make sure that you're giving them everything that they need. Some of the other common challenges are, well, we've been doing this way forever. Well, that's great, but obviously, you think there needs to be a change. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. You didn't invite me here to say, oh, you guys are doing a great job. Here's my bill, right? It doesn't work that way. So some of the other common challenges that I find in supply chain is that people, companies in different departments have a tendency just to kind of dump things into the supply chain bucket as, well, that's not my department. And that's one of the reasons why supply chain has become very, very good and efficient in solving problems, because we've had so much experience doing it. So one of the things that I would say to supply chain managers, directors of supply chain, who are working in companies, especially if they're, say, a medium or larger company where there's a little more departments and more moving parts and things like that, is to create a structure and to document things so that people understand, when you ask me a question, you need to provide this pieces of information to me so that I can answer it. Don't just send me a question saying, why is your shirt black? Right? There has to be a little bit more information in it, because my question back to you is, why do you need to know that? Why wouldn't my shirt be black? I mean, there's I can fight back with simple questions too. So when we talk about on a larger scale improving business, we really need people to sort of stop and take a breath and look at and analyze what it is they're asking about, and break it down into smaller pieces so that they can figure out sort of where the issue really is. Break down. Sometimes we talk about going into the weeds. Sometimes we get out way off there, but then we find the actual issue. And then when you can fix that one little tiny issue, perhaps that's going to set everything straight. Sometimes that's not the way it works, but sometimes we have a tendency to just to try to fix the whole thing at once, and that's not necessarily how it's going to work. You're going to need to fix that one step at a time, right? Hopefully I answered that. I know that that can be a really big question sometimes, where companies bring in consultants, and they expect consultants to solve issues with a magic wand. And quite often what we end up doing as consultants is we end up asking more questions. And it can feel and sometimes we need to be very invasive with the questions, because we need to know what we need to know in order to give you the proper solution. And Steve also asked another question here. What areas for improvement do customers sometimes overlook? To be quite fair, I was working in one manufacturing environment a number of years ago, where quality control existed as anything the customers sent back. I'm going to say that again. Quality control existed as anything the customers sent back. That didn't mean it was bad product. That just means that the customer rejected it for some reason. Quite often it would go back onto the shelf after somebody looked at it, because it was fine. As far as they were concerned, it was fine. The last couple of years I worked for that company, we actually brought in, or hired rather, a person who their job was quality control. They had to build quality control from scratch, from nothing. And one of the things that we actually did was we got all the plants. There was four of them at the time. We had them all ISO certified. I can't remember which number it was, 9001, I think. Anyway, it was quality of product. And just going through that was an eye opener for many people. And I'm not just talking about the management. I'm talking about people on the shop floor too, because when you do things like spend time documenting your process, and you spend time researching where your raw materials come from, and percentages of them and the makeup of them and things like that, people learn more about what they're doing. So this goes back to a question that I was answering at the beginning of this session here, where I was talking about, from a supply chain management perspective, become an expert in everything that the company does, and that the product is that you're looking after, and things like that. When you do that as a company, everybody becomes quality control. So I don't like to use the Hyundai example. The plant, I don't know how many people remember, they used to have this little on the production line at the Hyundai plant. There was you could pull the cord, and it basically would stop production. I don't know if anybody actually ever did that, but they showed that on the TV commercials, because everybody in effect is quality control. And that's one of the things I think that, a lot of companies, especially when you get to small and medium-sized companies, they sometimes overlook QC as just get it out the door. If it gets out the door and it makes it to the destination, obviously we're okay. Larger companies don't always have that luxury, and especially the multinationals, quite often they definitely have quality control in place. There's a lot of other compliance and things like that comes into it as well. But it's definitely something that is overlooked by many companies, in the sense that while they may say, or they may do some level of quality control, it may not be deep enough to actually impact them in a positive way. And then the other side of that is that, let's say, quality control back to your vendors as well. So instead of, and this, I'm kind of going into the lean mechanism a little bit, but in order to get raw material or product on your receiving dock that is meets your specifications, is compliant with any regulations that you might have to deal with, and just effectively is exactly 100% what you need to do with it, you put the onus back on your vendors. So, being very, again, that goes to the QC documentation that I mentioned a few minutes ago, where one of the things that we had to do there was we actually had to send a specification document to all of our vendors, and they had to confirm with every shipment that what they sent us meets these specifications. And there's a document that was involved in the shipment process that was included in that. I thought that was probably one of the best exercises that I ever went through in supply chain management. As painful and as hard as it was very fruitful, and made things a lot easier to make changes after the fact. After we got the certification, first time out, and it was done in 9 months, which is pretty unheard of for a medium-sized company that size. So we're drawing here to the last few minutes. I'm just gonna kind of take a pause for about 15 seconds here, and to see if anybody else has any other questions. One thing I will say is I'm going to turn this over, or no, I guess I'm not. We're going to we're not just totally disconnected here. After this session, my email, at the end of this session rather, my email will pop up on the screen. If you have any other questions or any questions that you may not necessarily want to share, or if you're watching this later on and you think of something that maybe I said that you wanted a little more clarity on, or there's something that is more specific to your company, which you may have to share some information that you don't want to share on a public forum like this. You'll be able to send that to me via email, and I'll do my best to to answer that question, to provide some sort of information to you. And if it becomes more of a conversation, things like that, then we can always talk about a more formal engagement. But for right now, I'm just here to answer the questions. So Leon is asking, is the specification document like a description of the product? Yeah, yes, it is, Leon. I would say that there is some degree of that, but it can actually go a lot deeper than that. So you're not just talking about this shirt is black and it has stitching on it, which has the Kwixand logo. It would say more specifically, this shirt is black in this Pantone color, and it has a folded collar with 3 buttons on it, which are also black, made out of acetate or something like that. And the logo is stitched on using this program with this many stitches per cubic centimeter, and so on and so on. And the thread used for for the Kwixand logo is going to be this type of thread and this color of white and all that sort of stuff. If you get into things like chemicals, and that's one of the things I was buying then, it was the total chemical makeup, the exact percentage of each component of that chemical, how it was mixed, and then of course there was things like dating. We wanted to make sure that we had a certain period of time before it was considered expired or past its best before date, so that we had time to use it. And so it can get specific. Specification document can get very specific, no pun there intended, and it should, and it can be. Sometimes it needs to be, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes, like you said, you mentioned description of the product. So for instance, white copy paper with 30% recycled content. Good enough, right? That's a description of the product. It does have a specification in it, but realistically, you're not telling somebody where they have to buy it. It doesn't have to be a certain brand or something like that. And you're not telling them, what hue of white, or where the recycled content comes from or anything like that. So there's again, you can be specific. If you're not ISO certified and you're looking to get ISO certified, then your auditor can definitely help you out with that. If you need anybody in from Kwixand supply chain or accounting or something like that, business processes to come and help you out, of course we can do that too. But that's another shameless plug for Kwixand. All right, so we're about 1 minute from time. We planned for an hour. I am going to sort of leave it there, and I think we're going to have a slide pop up on the screen here. It's going to have Jens's contact information on there and my contact information on there. And no, okay, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, there you go. Thank you, Alex. And please, if you have any other questions, please send them to me via email. If you'd like to talk about engaging the entire Kwixand team in a more formal sort of setting, please contact Jens and we'll arrange something. We are available to go pretty much anywhere in the world, and we look forward to helping everybody out. thank you very much for joining us today at our Q&A Live. We will definitely do this again. This has been a lot of fun for me, and I look forward to talking to you all later. Thank you.